Hey, what's up, guys? This is Mugen Lord here, and today I just want to follow up with the whole FTC and the Activision and Microsoft deal that's going on, because it looks like things may be wrapping up moving forward, and I want to talk about what the gaming landscape is going to look like within the next decade or so, and how this is going to impact us as gamers and consumers moving forward, because I think this is really important. So before we dive into this video, make sure you hit that notification bell and also hit that like button, subscribe button, because it definitely helps me out here in the algorithm. So let's dive right into it. So for starters, when it comes to this whole acquisition thing, I wasn't really invested in it. I noticed on Twitter, it's like when you talk about this whole thing, it always brings up a console war. You know, you have the Xbox fanboys, the Sony fanboys going at each other's throats back and forth. And you can never, if you're a normie and you coming into this, you can never really get a neutral or objective point of view on this, is because you either going to have someone who's biased for Xbox is going to give their point of view to this with this, and then you have your Sony side that's giving their bias input on this. So it's kind of hard to try to figure out where people stand on this, because everybody is rooting for their console of choice and everything. But for me, I really have no dog in this fight. I'm going to continue to keep saying this. I own all the consoles. I'm a gamer first. Wherever the games are, that's where I go. And as far as this acquisition is concerned, it's really scary. Is because this whole Activision Blizzard thing, Microsoft is trying to purchase this company for what, $70 billion. That's a lot of money. That's money that I'll probably never ever see in my lifetime. And Microsoft is just dropping this money out their wallet like it's nothing. This is just play money for these guys. And these guys are trying to acquire this company, and Sony on the other end is saying like, oh, what's going on? No, you can't do this. This is not fair. It's because it's this one particular franchise more so that Sony has interest in, which is of course Call of Duty. Now me, I don't care about Call of Duty. I'm not a Call of Duty fan, never was, never cared for it, but I can admit that Call of Duty is a gaming phenomenon. It's a cultural phenomenon. Like, Call of Duty is recognized by anyone, everyone. Your mom, your grandmother, your cat, your dog, everybody knows what Call of Duty is. And that game and that franchise rakes in a whole lot of money. And it's not because the game is just good. It's just the fact is that once Modern Warfare 2 came out, which was a good one, because my brother had it. I admit I had Modern Warfare 2. But ever since that happened, man, it just ingrained themselves in the mind of gamers and the culture in general. So no matter what they put out, they can be bad, they can be horrible. People will just buy it. Similar to how Pokemon have pretty much become at this point. You put out a new Pokemon, people's going to buy it regardless of the quality. And same thing when it comes to Call of Duty. Most importantly, they make most of their money off of their DLC and their season passes. Season passes, microtransactions, you name it. Cosmetics, that's where they rake in most of the money. And Sony themselves, they get a slice of that when it's on their platform. They get a cut of that. And since Call of Duty brings in all that money and Sony gets pretty much a cut of, that pie, they've been using that money to pretty much finance a lot of their Sony projects. That's been helping Sony to be able to come up and create more first-party exclusives. And, Sony acquired Bungie so they can get their expertise on, of course, the games as a service. So that money that they get from Call of Duty also finances those projects and and those ideas as well. So Sony is really invested in Call of Duty, and the fact is that Microsoft is just trying to buy the whole company, buy the company as a whole, really has them really scared. But I digress. I want to just go over this article that talks about the current situation about the Activision deal, and then I'll give you more of my input about what the future may look like if this happens to go through. And then in my personal opinion, we could be wrong about this and everything, but I don't know. Microsoft is starting to look more and more confident about this, that this is going to go through. The way I see it is, I think it's inevitable at this point, and we need to start looking and thinking about the future of where gaming is going to be. So we're going to dive into this article real quick, which is pretty interesting. What's going on? So Microsoft and Activision Blizzard extended the merger agreement to October. So from what I'm understanding, that Microsoft and Activision Blizzard had agreed on a date to when this thing is supposed to close and get this merger going, and they pretty much made it to the date, and they're still battling it in court and everything. So they had to extend it to October to try to, you know, clear things up so they can move forward. So the article pretty much states from TheVerge.com, there's Microsoft Blizzard Activision deal still extends merger agreement to October. There is a small delay to Microsoft proposed Activision Blizzard acquisition to resolve the UK regulatory situation. So Microsoft, Activision Blizzard have agreed to extend their merger agreement pending the outcome of negotiations with UK regulators. Now, both parties will now have until October 18 to finalize the transaction, after missing yesterday's original deadline date. So yes, that's what it was. So the recent decision in the US and approvals in 40 countries all validate that the deal is good for competition. Players in the future of gaming, tweeted Lulu Cheng, Activision Blizzard's CEO and EVP of corporate affairs, given global regulatory approvals and the company's confidence that the CMA now recognized there are remedies available to meet their concerns in the UK. The Activision Blizzard and Microsoft boards of directors have authorized the companies not to terminate the deal until October 18th. And Phil Spencer had pretty much left a tweet stating Microsoft and Activision Blizzard have extended their merger agreement deadline to 10/18. We're optimistic about getting this done and excited about bringing more games to more players everywhere. So that's the thing too, as well. Like, you can see just by this tweet when it comes to Phil Spencer that he's confident that this is going to go through. And at this point, I'm pretty much convinced that this Activision Blizzard merger with Microsoft is going to go through. I'm pretty much confident in at this point. I'll be surprised if this doesn't go through. Right now, they just prolonging this at this point. So Microsoft Vice Chair and President Brad Smith says the 3-month extension is designed to provide ample time to work through the final regulatory issues. Both Microsoft and Activision Blizzard have also agreed to a higher termination fee and new commercial arrangements for the transaction. A termination fee payable if Microsoft or Activision walks away from the deal is now set at $3.5 billion if the deal doesn't close by August 29th, and it jumped to $4.5 billion if September 15 passes without a finalization. Activision has also agreed to potentially hold separate the company or certain assets of the company, or to implement other lawful alternatives to consummate the merger with UK regulators. This is a key part, as it may allow the merger to go ahead with restrictions from the UK's Competition Market Authority, CMA. So this 3-month delay is related to Microsoft's ongoing negotiations with the CMA. The UK regulator originally blocked the deal over cloud gaming concerns earlier this year. While Microsoft has appealed that decision, the company is also preparing to reportedly offer a new proposal to sell off its rights to cloud gaming in the UK to try and get a deal over line. Yo, Microsoft really want to get this done. They really want this merger to happen, for the fact is that they're willing to sell rights to cloud gaming in the UK just to get this through. This we gotta talk about this. So together with Activision, we are announcing the extension to our merger agreement to 10/18 to provide ample time to work through pretty much all the issues and stuff like that. So just after reading all this, dude, Microsoft, and I said this before, I think this is really, really important, because people, you see from the fanboys, you see what everybody's talking about when it comes to, especially the Sony fanboys talk about, Microsoft to just quit, just give up. Like Sony had pretty much dusted them last generation because of the whole DRM with the Xbox One and everything like that, and they haven't been able to catch up ever since. and Sony had pretty much gained so much momentum, even moving into this generation with the PS5. And I've always said this, and looking at this whole situation where Microsoft is really trying to gain, a grip and gain a hold over Activision Blizzard. I've said this before. Microsoft is trying to play the long game. They was never in it for the short game. And what I mean by the long game is they're looking at the future of gaming. And this is where what I'm concerned about. Not even just with Microsoft. I'm just concerned with where the gaming industry is going as a whole moving forward. See, what's going on is we're moving into this digital gaming. Physical media is starting to pretty much lose its grip. You won't be able to find physical media for much longer. You can see that some games today, you buy the game and sometimes you open up the box, there's no cartridge in it. It's just a code that you just download and everything. Or if you get collections sometimes that has multiple different games, sometimes you don't get one cartridge with one portion of the game, and then you get it followed by a code that has the rest of the game. So we're starting to move into a whole much more digital space. We talked about the PS5, the potential PS5 Slim, that's going to not have a disk drive. But if you want a disk drive as an option, you'll be able to have it so you can be able to put physical media in it. But it seems, and you see it right now, that everybody's moving to digital. We talked about Final Fantasy 16. We look at the physical sales. The physical sales at one point was pretty low, but most of the sales made up for the digital sales. And this is where we're going. This is what Microsoft's seen since the Xbox One, that we were going to be moving to this whole digital era. And with the Xbox One, Microsoft tried to capture that market really early. And it didn't work because the gamers didn't want it. The gamers love physical media. They didn't want the whole DRM and being always connected online and everything like that. They didn't want that. And I don't care what nobody say. Sony was planning to do the same thing with the PS4, but they seen the backlash that Xbox One had received. Microsoft had received with the Xbox One, and said, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's go stick to what we normally do when it comes to games, and we'll be good to go. And that decision pretty much benefited Sony in the long run. And now Microsoft, we hear now with this Activision Blizzard merger situation, and we already seen what they did. They got Bethesda, and they just racking up all these IPs. And ever since Xbox Series X and the S had released, they had introduced the Game Pass. See, during the course of the time, streaming services has become, like, I wouldn't say even lucrative, because right now it's debatable at this point. But the whole streaming and subscription service that Netflix had pretty much pioneered has pretty much just did a shift in the industry, where now game companies are looking at it, and now they want to have their subscription service and do their own Netflix, but with video games and everything like that. And they're focusing more on free-to-play games, live services games, and I don't really like that, man. The whole live services games, the free-to-play games, and games being sold to you in portions, or they selling you a half-baked game, and then as you're playing, they're selling the rest of the game to you until it's officially complete. You look at examples like Fallout 76, and Todd was pretty much saying that, it's not about how the game launched, it's pretty much how the game is going to be over time. And I think that's the wrong ideology to have. But we're moving into this type of era of gaming, and Microsoft is trying to be the pioneer, or they're trying to be the number one, top dog in this space. If they're buying up and acquiring companies, they can just add this to their Game Pass. They can add this to their subscription service, to the point where gamers won't have no choice but to go to Microsoft in order to have access to these games. But Microsoft is not the full villain in this too, as well, as because we gotta think about other companies that's also buying up a bunch of other companies, and this is like causing this acquisition war where companies feel as though that, man, like if Microsoft is spending $70 billion, then man, I have to buy this company so Microsoft or any other company won't come in and buy this company. Because you already got people within the Sony camp saying that maybe, hey, no, Microsoft, Sony should buy Square Enix. That'll get them. That'll stop them. But then I think about it, I said, how does that benefit Sony? I mean, Microsoft don't really get a lot of Square Enix titles anyway. I mean, Final Fantasy 16 is exclusive to Sony. You know, Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy is pretty much exclusive to Sony. So there's really no big benefit on this, and I don't know why gamers would want that, for the simple fact is, if Sony did acquire Square Enix, then what about Nintendo? There's been a lot of great titles, side projects that Nintendo has been getting. Octopath Traveler. We've been getting little projects like Alive remake. We had the Trials of Mana remake. We've been getting all these cool projects that went to Nintendo Switch and has done really, really good for Nintendo. And then if they buy Square Enix, if Sony buy it, then what about you? Nintendo fans are going to be asked out. That's why I believe that this whole acquisition stuff, you know, there's always different underlying conditions, you know, that sometimes, you know, I can see why, or it's justifiably, you know, right to buy, you know, a company. But other than that, man, third-party companies should be its own entity. I don't want them being bought up. You know, third parties should be what they are, third parties, and they should be their games should be available on all platforms for where all customers be able to get access to these games. You know, like if we like I shouldn't have to buy another console just to be able to. I own every console, but I shouldn't have to buy another console just to be able to have access to that game. I think with third-party companies, I don't care. I don't mind much for first party. If you own it, that's their titles. They have every right to make them exclusive. But third parties should never, ever, ever be exclusive to and locked behind one console. It shouldn't be held hostage. I think it should, and I think it helps the companies as well when they're able to have their games on multiple different platforms, opposed to just being locked into one. I just don't appreciate that. But I will say this. When it comes to this acquisition and everything, it really should put a flame under Sony's ass. And this is what I'm talking about. When you have a company that's in the lead, when the competition just can't compete with them, they become lax. You get what I'm saying? To the point is where they're not putting out quality, or the quality is starting to pretty much downgrade itself, because they know that they're the top dogs and that consumers, gamers, is going to come in and purchase their products regardless. Because you remember last generation, you know, we were supposed to get a lot of games that become cross-play, and Sony would not allow it. Sony would not allow cross-play that much. I mean, we had some cross-play games here and there, but Microsoft and Nintendo was willing to play together. But when it came to Sony, Sony was the top dog. Sony wasn't having it. Like, they wanted to keep their ecosystem and keep their base where it was at. They didn't want to do this cross promotion thing and everything. And when you have a company that's at the top, they get to dictate the market. They get to dictate how things are. And when it comes to these acquisitions, when they're buying up a bunch of different companies and stuff, you know, you have one big or five or just a limited amount of entities that's just running the entire industry. And that pretty much, to me, destroys, you know, innovation, creativity, and everything of the sort. But I would say this should put a flame underneath Sony's ass. Is for the simple fact is that Sony has a lot of IPs, some great IPs that they are pretty much locked away and threw in their dungeon. And so the fact is that Microsoft is trying to acquire, and there's a possibility that it could go through, this should be a wake-up call to them. Because at the same time, this will breed some good competition. Because they don't really need Call of Duty. They have other franchises that can make up for Call of Duty. As I said before, what about Resistance series? You know what I'm saying? What about Killzone? Killzone should be their Call of Duty right there. They should invest more money, invest more time to make Killzone one of the most profitable franchises ever. One of the most competitive franchises to Call of Duty ever. You know? They need to start broadening their catalog. They need to start bringing back more Japanese titles. What about Ape Escape? I want a brand new Ape Escape. Or remake Ape Escape. You know, that was a great game. Especially me growing up as a kid playing Ape Escape. I loved the hell out of that game. Next to Mario 64. I loved Ape Escape. So bring back that series. What about Parappa the Rapper? Bring back Parappa the Rapper. Innovate the rhythm genre again. You know? What about Gravity Rush? Bring back Gravity Rush. They also have their own RPG series, Legend of Dragoon. That could be their Final Fantasy series, where every Legend of Dragoon is a different story. Similar to how you have Final Fantasy in the Tales series. So they have a lot of IP that's out there Oh, I almost forgot. Jumping Flash. I love Jumping Flash. It was a first-person platformer adventure game on the PS1 when that launched, when the PS1 first launched. And we haven't seen Robert ever since after Jumping Flash 2. But he made a guest appearance in the demo that came with the PS5, which I thought was pretty cool. But other than that, Sony is just laying on franchises that's just lying dormant. So in my personal opinion, I think this could be a way, because they screwed up the deal. Because first, Microsoft had said to Sony that, hey, for the next 10 years, you not only can get Call of Duty, but you can get the other Activision Blizzard deals, no, Activision titles as well. But then they turned around, you know, with their arrogance and fumbled the ball. And now Microsoft don't owe them anything when it comes to the other Activision titles. So now they're only getting the 10-year deal for Call of Duty, but they ain't getting the deals for the other titles, which means Crash Bandicoot can be totally exclusive to Microsoft. Spyro the Dragon, Overwatch, everything, because they only focused on Call of Duty. So they end up screwing over their own consumer base simply by just being arrogant, you know, as they are, you know. But at the same time, they can start building franchises, reviving franchises that can combat what they have lost from this Activision deal. So Sony gamers can still win at this, because they'll be able to get their favorite franchises back and revived. So let's just see how this goes, man. I definitely want to hear your thoughts in the comment sections below when it comes to this whole Activision Microsoft deal, and, you know, with Sony and everything. Do you think this is a bad idea? Do you think this is going to hurt the gaming market and just the game industry as a whole in the, you know, in the long run? I definitely want to hear your thoughts in the comment sections below. If you liked the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell once again, because it definitely helps me in the algorithm. And always leave your opinion, even if you don't like the video. You can hit that dislike button, but your interactions definitely helps me out. It gets my videos recommended in the feed, because a lot of you guys love the content that I produce here. So since you guys love the content, show that you like the content and love it by just sharing it and just leaving feedback, because that helps me. This gets my content seen. So this is Mugen Lord, sign off. I'll see you game fiends later. Peace out.